Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden.
Where we continue to follow the capture and killing of Osama bin Laden now.
Those are just some of the scenes overnight as thousands of Americans gathered in celebration of Osama bin Laden's death.
Former Navy SEAL Rob O'Neill says he has thought about the mission every day since that May Day in 2011.
For multiple conversations you had with Rob O'Neill over the past year and a half, how'd you get
access? And you described that his head kind of exploded when you hit him.
I actually hit him 3 times because I shot him twice when he was standing and once on the ground.
That is the fucking American badass right there.
We are not going for fame and we are not going for bravado. We are going for the single mom who dropped her kids off at elementary school on a Tuesday morning, and then 45 minutes later she jumped to her death out of a skyscraper.
If you need help, hang up and then dial your operator.
I'm Rob O'Neill, and this is the Operator Podcast. All right, we are rolling. Once again, thank you for joining me at the Operator Podcast. We had a lot of fun last week, and I'm excited to do it again this week. Lots to discuss. As usual, I have some notes that I've taken and hopefully some research that I've done that you will enjoy. I know I enjoyed looking a lot of stuff up. Sometimes I get onto one of my bullet points, and then all of a sudden I go off on tangents because, as usual, we get into politics. Sometimes we get into war stories or training stories or other stuff that we enjoy. But because we had a little downtime over the holiday, Independence Day, we all seem to be a little bit closer to the freedom that we're so lucky to have, and also closer to our mobile devices so we can look at those and some of the events that have happened. We've been enthralled with a story involving the ocean and some civilian explorers / tourists that tried to go down to the Titanic. It imploded. Everyone was looking at that. And then obviously it was discussed whether or not that was sort of a cover-up to go what's going on with the first family and the first son and all that. We discussed that last week. We might bring that up again. But I was interested in the ocean because we were looking at it, and then I was noticing some other stories around the world, around the East Coast of the United States, stuff that happens when we as mankind get into Mother Ocean and run into marine life, because we're kind of spoiled that we think we run everything, but once you dip one of your little tootsies into the water, you're officially at the bottom of the food chain. So we're going to discuss that as well. Some history lessons, I hope, what happened on this day involving the ocean. That's what piqued my existence, and we're going to get into that. I'm excited in about a minute, but first, because we're going to inevitably get into politics and what happens with people who I almost said run the country. That would have only been right if I said run the country into the ground. But with what they're doing in printing money, I need to discuss what's happening in your life financially with banks collapsing. There's about 186 banks on the verge of collapsing, and we don't want yours to be next, because the Fed always does the same thing. They print money out of thin air like they did a few months ago. Back in March, they printed $300 billion, making the dollar worthless. And there's always the talk of recession that could have a significant impact on your investment and retirement account. So take my advice, protect your financial future with something real, something you could touch. Gold and silver from my friends at Allegiance Gold. Allegiance Gold can help protect your IRA or 401k with physical gold and silver, or if you prefer, have it delivered securely right to your front door. Since the beginning of time, there has been only one universal currency that is always of value, and that is gold. Allegiance Gold has the highest ratings in the industry. 5 stars with TrustLink, a AAA rating with the Business Consumer Alliance, and an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. You can invest with confidence because of the quality and service of Allegiance Gold. Get up to $5,000 in free silver on a qualifying purchase when you visit protectwiththeoperator.com. protectwiththeoperator.com, or give them a call today at 844-790-9191. Don't let the Fed play Monopoly with your money. Protect your future with Allegiance Gold. So go to protectwiththeoperator.com or give them a call at 844-790-9191. Allegiance Gold. And also on the Operator Podcast, we talk about security. We talk about privacy. And I got to ask you, do you know what a VPN is? It's a virtual private network. Secure tunnel between your device and the internet. VPNs protect you from online everything. Using the internet without ExpressVPN. That's ExpressVPN is like writing a very important paper but not hitting save once in a while or at the end. I mean, you're good most of the time, but then your system crashes or you get a freeze. Is it all gone? Every time you connect to an unencrypted network, like at a coffee joint, a hotel, airports, any Wi-Fi, any hacker on the same network can gain access to your personal data, stuff you don't want them to have, your passwords or banking info. And it doesn't take much technical knowledge to hack someone. Just some cheap hardware is needed, and a smart 12-year-old could do it. And hackers can make up to about $1,000 per person selling personal info that you don't give them permission to have on the dark web. So what ExpressVPN will do for you is, I mentioned an encrypted tunnel. It creates a secure encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet. So hackers can't see your sensitive data. They can't steal it. Very secure. It would take a hacker with a supercomputer about 1 billion years if you're using ExpressVPN. It's very easy to use. Just get the app, fire up the app, click one button, and get protected. It works on everything. Your phones, laptops, tablets, and more, so you can stay secure on the go. I travel quite a bit. It's important for me. Security reasons. I like privacy with my data, with my investment, with my passwords. I travel a lot, so I want it to be as if I was at home, and I even use it at home. So security is a peace of mind, and you can't put a price on that. So secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/the operator. expressvpn.com/the operator. That's expressvpn.com/the operator. And you can get an extra 3 months free. expressvpn.com/the operator. But yeah, episode 53. Pretty excited. The Operator Podcast. As always, I want to hear your opinion on this. What you think as an operator, what you want to tell me as an operator. Hit me up on social media, all of them, at McHuya, it should be. And I would love to hear what you think, because everyone's got an opinion on this subject. We seem to get back to the ocean. It is the summertime, and people are getting in the oceans. And I love history, and because it's July 12th, 107 years ago, there was a series of shark attacks off the coast of New Jersey, right around a time where people really didn't even think sharks would attack people back in the day, back in 1916, where they would say that sharks have their teeth are sharp and small so they can grab onto fish, and there's no way a shark could break a human bone. And people were getting into the water, and inevitably, if you get into someone else's, if you get into an animal's natural habitat and it's not your natural habitat and you run into them, there could be issues. And, there are sharks in the ocean. And I kind of want to talk about what happened then. We're going to go back and talk about those attacks that spawned all the shark craze, basically. And then some of the stuff that's happening now, because there's been a few shark attacks this summer where people have been bitten by sharks as they're surfing or paddle boarding, standing in the water, stuff like that. But not every attack is a shark attack, and not every sighting is a shark. When there's some footage. Well, I mean, there is some cool footage if you haven't seen it. I think it's a great hammerhead swimming in between people, and you can see the big dorsal fin. And it's actually, when I first saw the video of the shark swimming with the people it's like people waiting in the water and not even a big surf zone, and then people out there swimming, and there's this hammerhead kind of finessing his way through whatever. And I like great hammerheads. I think they're probably the smartest shark out there. But he's just doing his thing, and people start screaming and panicking like people do. And if one person panics, we all panic, because it's contagious as hell. We're herd animals a lot of the time, and we're prey animals, especially when we're in the ocean. People freaking out, and they're yelling at the guy who's out there swimming. Shark didn't do anything. He just kind of left. He was on his own. But allegedly people were bit, and I wasn't there, so they might have been. But then we've got drones now, and we've got lifeguards who are out there, and you've got people in boats, and they said they spotted, and like the news was all over this because they love to report chaos. They love it for the ratings. And there were saying this month that, there's schools of sharks right off the coast, and they're trying to make it sound like there's these raving lunatic Finding Nemo great whites out there in hordes waiting for the people to come to the depths so we can eat you. And that's not the case at all. And actually the schools they were showing were, I think, and I have heard, I wasn't there, and I'm not a marine biologist, I heard they were black drumfish that are out there feeding on fish that come out there that are prey fish. They saw those and they want them to be sharks, obviously, and other people are correcting them, saying no, those are sandbar sharks, and they're living in the sandbars. And both, like a black drumfish gets up to 5 feet long, obviously not a man eater, but it's there to hunt smaller fish. And then the sandbar sharks doing the same thing, but sandbar sharks, they get to about 6 feet long. And sandbar sharks get a bad reputation because they're known for their tall dorsal fin. They got a snub nose, but a really tall dorsal fin. And a dorsal fin for people is a reason to freak out. Which, by the way, is what you don't want to do. If you start splashing in the water, you're not going to scare a shark away. They're just going to think you're in distress and you're a prey animal. Actually, the way to handle a shark, easier said than done. I've been in the water with apex predators. We'll get into that in a minute. But the way to do it is the first thing you do is face them and make eye contact. Ideally, when you get in the ocean, you're not going to do this every time, but if you're out swimming, you want to have a mask, you want to have fins, and you want to be aware of your surroundings. But I've seen people demonstrate, scientists demonstrate that when they start splashing their fins, the shark will come not after them, but it really gets interested because potentially it's prey, and they come check it out. But once you face them, you can, they're not, if they realize that you're a predator too, they might not attack. But there are arguments between the black drumfish or the sandbar sharks, but the media made it sound like all this stuff. So there's a panic. But like these sandbar sharks are found everywhere from Massachusetts down to Brazil, and like juveniles are common in the Chesapeake Bay, and there's nursery grounds and stuff like that. And sharks, when they are young, they stay in the shallows because other sharks will eat other sharks. But the reason a lot of these fish are chilling out there is because there's bunker fish that come out of the estuaries, and an estuary is a partially enclosed coastal body of water, like brackish water, sort of fresh, sort of salty, but because of certain times of year and the sun and all that nonsense, not nonsense, but the stuff that, when I say nonsense, I think it means stuff that I don't understand. The older fish know they go back to their spawning grounds, and they spawn in the estuaries, and then the babies, when they come out, then the prey animals, including whales, start coming in closer because that's where the prey is, and that's where we are, and that's what they're seeing. But the media just loves this stuff because, like I said, it gets ratings and whatnot, and it's not the case that even if you see a shark, it's not going to attack you. It's cooler to see a shark than to think about seeing a shark. Like when I was diving with sharks, it was a lot like skydiving, where not a lot like skydiving. It's actually nothing like skydiving, but the sensation is the same. Like it's scarier in the boat and walking to the edge and jumping in than it is to actually seeing the shark. When we were in Bimini, we were diving with great hammerheads and tiger sharks up close with no cages, and it was spooky at first, but when you get in, it's actually really, really cool. With skydiving, you're scared until you get out, and then it's just game on. You know why? You ever seen scuba divers when they sit on the boat? You know why they always fall backwards into the water is, well, because if they fell forward, they'd just fall into the boat. I mean, it's fascinating getting in the ocean, and people just love hearing about shark attacks, and they're real. If you've been in the ocean, you've had a positive encounter with a shark, you just don't realize it. And we are not on the menu. If sharks wanted to eat people, there would be not just attacks, but there's a difference between being bitten by a shark and being attacked by a shark. Being bitten by a shark is simply because they don't have arms, and what's their one way to tell what you are is by taking a bite. So what you need to take into consideration is that they are the apex predator and you are not. And if they're curious which sharks are, they might take a bite. So you don't want to screw up. When I always say don't talk yourself into an ass whoop, and don't be the reason that you got attacked by a shark. And what does that mean? If there are sea lions present, like a place like Chatham Bars in Cape Cod, might not be the best idea to go paddleboarding with a bunch of sea lions because there are great white sharks out there. And even if a great white doesn't mean to attack you, but he bites you, that's what we would call devastating. That's a big shark. So the muddy water thing, don't swim where sharks are used to feeding. If they're no, because there's a shark attack that happened off the coast of Egypt in the Red Sea, and they're trying to say that, well, these are kind of rare. Nah, they're really not. It happens once in a while. Once the summer's too many fatality. It's happened this year. It happened last year, and it could be anything from this year. The horrific attack that you may have seen, it circulated for a while on the internet. And if you have a tolerance, you can check it out. It's too bad it happened. But a man was killed by a tiger shark, and actually part of him was eaten. So it can happen, and that could be a number of reasons. If you run into a hungry shark, like an oceanic white tip, and it's just hungry and ravenous and losing its mind, it might just take a bite and attack you. And this was the case here. But why is that the case in the Red Sea? Well, they're known over there, that part of the world, for when they slaughter animals, cattle or camels, they're known for throwing them in there. And that's been happening for a long, long time. So sharks become accustomed to that. And that's where they feed. Plus, the shark that attacked and ate part of this guy was pregnant. So that's another factor. You got a shark that its instinct is to soon protect its pups or whatever, or protect they might just get rid of them as soon as they're born, but the natural instinct is protects their lineage, and might be hungry. Pregnant chicks are hungry. They're irritable. Who knows? But that's one. And then, a year before that, they were saying it was a blue shark or a mako. But you got to figure too, just because we're human doesn't mean we own this place. Doesn't mean that we can just show up and own it. These sharks have been here tiger sharks have probably been swimming by there for 1 million years. Great whites have been around for millions of years, and we just, we're kind of new to this. We showed up. So it's very, very important not to get into a spot where you're putting yourself into danger. And like I said, with the fins, with the mask, look around. But my experience with sharks, I went down with we were filming some TV stuff. I was with Andy Casagrande, ABC4 Explorer. If you don't follow him, definitely follow him. Great, some of the best shark footage you'll ever see. This dude dives with great whites without cages, which is that's one of the new extreme sports. Very, very cool footage. But just to see them in their own element, it's mesmerizing because sharks have their own personalities. You can tell the great hammerheads are smart. You can tell the reef sharks are like puppies. The lemons are great. Lemon sharks are cool. If you see the video of lemon sharks yawning, it looks scary as hell, but he's just yawning. I've got a picture I'll post. My father and I've mentioned this before actually, swimming on the surface in between Bimini and Florida, on the surface with sharks, with lemons and reefs. And, you just don't do certain things. You don't necessarily need to touch the shark. If you're jumping off a boat, don't jump on the shark. If they're feeding the sharks, don't get in the middle of that feeding frenzy, but swimming with them, as long as you're cool, they're cool too. Everybody's like a bunch of Fonzies in the water, right? Like Pulp Fiction. Everybody's cool. But this stuff gets the headlines and people love it, and then they go back to the movies, Jaws and all that things where the one where Samuel Jackson was a shocker. I forget the name of that show, but sharks are always the bad guys. People are afraid of the ocean, even though the ocean, Mother Ocean is awesome, and most of the planet, but unforgiving. You're not going to get a lot of love out of Mother Ocean, and not going to get a love out of the creatures that are in it. But it's the same thing anywhere you go. If you go to, I grew up in Montana. I've been in the ocean now, and I'm comfortable in the ocean, and I love sharks. I love the way the whole thing works, and but I didn't grow up there. I grew up in Montana, and I was always amazed at the tourists that would come to Montana. And this is way before Yellowstone. I mean, not before Yellowstone Park, but before Yellowstone became popular on TV. But I was familiar with the area. I was familiar with hunting. And when you go hunting, just like in the Rocky Mountains, just like in the ocean, there is prey and there are predators. And there's a natural system that goes along with that. And if you inject yourself into it, like a grizzly bear doesn't really care what your political affiliation is. Just be smart about being stupid. If you go to Yellowstone, everything from a cow moose, which cow moose are actually really cool because they're one of the few animals, a herbivore, which means it eats plants, but they can also, one of the few animals on planet Earth that can use the word tree as a verb. Because if you see a cow moose, God forbid a calf or two calves are there, that moose will tree you. And if you don't tree yourself, it will stomp you to death. So that's it. Don't take a selfie with the bison. You look that up. People just going over there trying to take a picture with a bison, and then they get murked. The bison are big, and they will hurt you. Again, not a man-eater, but it'll be a man-thumper. So be careful when you put yourself in that situation. Another thing up there is the grizzly bears. So we get people, we have, and this is for years, as long as I can remember, we'll get tourists up there that love that are, what we call tree huggers, and that's great, man. You want a better environment? That's awesome. You want a cleaner planet? That's great. So do I. Who doesn't? If you don't want a cleaner planet, you're an asshole. But also, it's like the thing when certain places you travel, just because you're not at war with someone doesn't mean they're not at war with you. Just because they're not on your menu does not mean you're not on theirs. Hence, grizzly bears. We got grizzly bears up there. But a lot of the people that love nature are like, well, I'm going to go for a hike because I love to hike. I don't like guns, though, because guns are evil, and guns are the reason there's so much violence, which is obviously complete bullshit, but hey, you do you. But they don't want to carry guns as they hike. So they have bear spray, which is awesome. That might work. Actually, I was looking at bear spray. I hope I didn't tell this joke before. This is true, but it's his joke. I was talking to someone in one of those outdoor stores, and I was looking at the bear spray. It's like $25, maybe more. And I said, wow, the bear spray is pretty expensive. And he goes, well, if you want to get a cheaper one, just go up, in certain parts of Yellowstone Park, hike a little bit. If you can find a free can of bear spray in a huge pile of bear shit, meaning he ate the guy that tried to spray him. Another thing they have, believe it or not, is a bear bell. So you ding the bell. Now, grizzly bears are smart, and they can hear that, and a bell doesn't scare them away. If anything, what do you think that sounds like to them? Possibly a dinner bell. So you got spraying a bell, and you're going to hike through Yellowstone because the bears aren't going to touch you because you love them. Not the case. And even these people that you see that are hiking through on these trails in places where there are predators, mountain lions, even though they're very rare, grizzly bears, and all of a sudden, I've seen videos of dudes with their families and young kids, and a bear shows up, and all they can do is go, hey, bear. Motherfucker, you should have a gun on you. And I'm not saying kill the bear, but I'm saying get the kids going, now it's you and the bear, and if you need to shoot him, you might not kill him with a pistol. You probably won't, but you might scare him off, hopefully, but at least your family will get away, and that's a hell of an ending to your story. That's pretty cool. But I even know stories of... the way that I talked about the tiger sharks that know where they're getting fed, they know where the chum is coming in the Red Sea. So do the oceanic whitetips. So do the great whites. Even in places like Bimini, where I said I was going, we get such good footage there because the sharks hear the motors. Even in Isla Guadalupe, I went down there. The great whites, the biggest great whites in the world, are there in Mexico, and they know the sound of the motor equals food. So you go down there in Bimini on Tiger Beach, they got these big metal crates full of fish, chum, and the pros come out and they feed them, and they're habitual. They know where they're going to get fed. So the sharks know where to go. They can hear it. The bears know where to go, and if they like to eat people. And also, here's something: I knew of guys getting killed like right near in between my home of Butte, Montana, and Deer Lodge, Montana, where a guy would shoot an elk, which is fine. You're hunting, kill the elk, and then you got to go up and gut the elk. Here's another point where, just like swimming with fins and a mask, when you're gutting an elk in certain mountains, in certain areas, you want to keep your head on a swivel. You need to keep situational awareness because you just shot that elk. The elk is dead, but guess who probably heard that gunshot? The grizzly bear. And if he likes the taste of elk, which bears do, and a cheap, easy meal, he's probably going to come do that. And people have been mauled, not because the bear wants to eat the person, but he will kill you to get you out of the way of the elk you just gave him. So the people with the bear bells and the bear spray and all that good stuff, and if it works, I hope so. And I'm not advocating for anyone to get attacked by a wild animal, but I've seen it myself in Yellowstone Park where a big bull elk who knows he's safe at Gardner, Montana, on the football field during hunting season, the bull knows no one's going to shoot him there. He just knows, and he chills out there. And for some reason, there's a 6x6 point bull elk chilling out, and someone wants to go over and get a picture. That elk will F you in the A. And he's got 12 total pointers and 2 that are called war tines. And I'm assuming without lube, that is not a nice thing to have happen to you. There's another thing too with the geysers, like Old Faithful and all that stuff that the geysers, people have, that stuff gets hot and it's full of all kinds of acid. There are people that have tried to sneak in and get a late night in hot springs, or God forbid, I've heard it before where someone throws a stick and their dog chases it and he jumps in and then the owner jumps in after without thinking, don't jump in that 250 degree water, and then they die. And then by the time you're dead by the time the paramedics show up, and also people have just completely vanished. So it's all a matter of realizing that Mother Nature is real, predators are real, and even prey animals can mess you up if you're not smart about it. So it's okay to take off the blinders, if you will, and realize that this isn't staring at my phone, and this is not Instagram, and this is real life, and there's real stuff out there. So the ocean's the same way, but do keep this in mind. When you put yourself in that situation, you don't need to either. Because as much as I love sharks and I love swimming in the ocean, it's very relaxing every single time. I did some research, and I found out, without a doubt, there has never been one person who has been attacked while sitting at the beach bar sipping on a pina colada. Getting back to Mother Ocean, because we've been so fascinated from the shark attacks that we're going to get into the 1916 attacks off the Jersey Shore. We mentioned briefly, and I talked a couple of weeks ago about the ill-fated submarine that went down to the Titanic, and everyone was fascinated with that. I want to mention, and I need to go to my notes here, that 80% of the ocean has never been mapped out. I love Mother Ocean. We know more. We've mapped more of Mars and the moon than we have of our own ocean. And it's fascinating when I think about it, because there's to give you an idea of the depth of the ocean, there's 5,280 feet in a mile. So 5,280 feet in a mile. The Titanic is at 12,500 feet. So that's down, what's that, 2.36 miles down. That's the Titanic, 2.36 miles down. That's also the elevation where you skydive. So 2.36 miles up is generally, if you go out and do a tandem jump, which I highly recommend because that'll change your life. Go to a drop zone. Well, I highly recommend I would recommend a tandem first, but then taking the class and then jumping with your own canopy, because that's just awesome. But when you do a tandem jump, or you see the videos of the people doing tandems, they're as high up as the Titanic is down. And so you can tell it's a couple miles. That's a long way down the ocean. It's a long way up. Mount Everest is at 29,032 feet above sea level. So 5.5 miles up is Everest, the highest point on Earth. And the lowest point of the ocean, this is badass, it's in Marianas Trench, which is off the coast of Guam, not quite near, but in between Guam and the Philippines, closer to Guam. But Marianas Trench, there's a place in Marianas Trench called Challenger Deep, and it's the deepest part of the world. And that is 35,867 feet deep. 35,800. 35,876. Let me say that again. 35,876 feet deep. So we'll call that 6.8 miles down is Marianas Trench. And there are like 3 pools down there that are all the same. And there have been people going there. The first people to go there was a Navy guy and an explorer. Don Walsh was a Navy guy, and Jacques Piccard, the first 2 humans to reach Challenger Deep. They went as a team in 1960. How cool is that? So we've got guys going down there. And then 52 years later, this is actually a really cool story, is James Cameron, the filmmaker of Titanic. He was the first person. He did a solo dive. That's just pretty awesome, going down that deep to the ocean where, and they were saying like there's not even anything down there. There's like microorganisms, which I guess are little teeny tiny fish that are sucking on the ocean floor. And obviously, you know, you're not doing anything down there. So you're 6.8 miles down there. And you know, other people have gone down there. What's cool about this now recently, because of recent events, it's not going to be really popular to be diving to great depths in the ocean, because I mean it is scary, but that's exploration. I still can't wrap my mind around James Cameron. That's awesome. But then like 7 years after that, so James Cameron went down there in 2012, and then around 2019, limiting factor submersible started going down there, and this is where people pretty much just set records. Like there was in June of 2020, the first woman and also the first astronaut went down there, and then the first woman to be at Earth's highest point and lowest point, that was in 2020. So people are going down there. First father and son, first Asian person, first Jewish person. You can kind of go down the list. Not a big list, but they're going down there, and it's just cool. That's a different world, and we'll probably never make that a permanent habitat, but I think it's awesome thinking about that, the lowest point on the Earth underwater, because we're not even getting into the mantle and whatever else is down there and the shifting tides and why the planet's getting bigger. And I mean, it's probably because our SUVs, because the climate is changing because of our SUVs and the fact that you cook at home with gas, you Nazi. But yeah, just kind of neat talking about the ocean and about nature and about the way it works. And it's just that simple. And there's nothing, you don't need to be afraid of the ocean. When I was filming I was working with Andy Casagrande, ABC4 Explorer is his handle. Definitely follow him. We were working on a show to prove that you can do a solo swim at night in great white territory and not be hurt, which I did. And so we were filming all over the place. We started off with a swim in Mexico, Isla Guadalupe, which, by the way, if you're looking for a vacation that you don't know what to do, they charter cage dives out there. It's unbelievable. Cleanest water other than Bora Bora I've ever seen. Easily the coolest great whites I've ever seen, including the ones I didn't see, because you may have had an interaction with one. Went down there off the coast of California. The reason we were filming this show was because the superhighway for great whites is in between Isla Guadalupe up to about Oregon, and they swim up and down there, and obviously Navy SEALs train in basic underwater demolition SEAL training off the coast of San Diego, and the West Coast SEAL teams are there, and the Marines are there, and people are swimming there, but no Navy SEAL's ever been attacked by a great white. So one of our swims, some of our swims are out at San Clemente Island and in between San Catalina and San Clemente off the coast of California. Great whites breeding, and they're hunting, and there's sea lions out there. But my job was to prove that doing a solo night swim, which I did for a number of hours, miles off the coast of California at night with just a drone above me, and that'll get you going. But I mean, it's one thing to know that you're going to be fine. It's another thing to think how much water is below you. And I was swimming at night by myself. We have a lot of great footage of it. We swam in Bimini with all the sharks. Got great footage. And what I was proving was that you're going to be fine in the water. They never aired my show because we were going to air it right around June of 2020, and that was the summer of complete chaos when Marxists were burning down our cities. I don't know if you remember these mostly peaceful protests where rioters were looting and burning shit down. And I was tweeting as it was happening that I was disgusted. The fact that Americans are buying this stuff and they're funding them. Basically what I said was BLM was a Marxist organization, which it turned out to be, because I was saying it because the founders of it were saying we are trained Marxists and we're coming after you. So I was tweeting that, but the network said I wasn't inclusive enough, so they didn't ever air my show. I'm not going to say which network it was. It's a pretty popular network. It's almost national, and they do a lot of geographic stuff around the world. But, they're good. They got good footage. They still have it. I wish they would air it, because I'm just proving, hey, look at me, dumb white guy from Montana can swim at night with great whites and not get touched. Actually, when I was doing that swim, I got out of the water. We did it 2 nights in a row. I was off by myself in the dark off the coast. I mean, you can see the lights of San Diego, but not where I am. And they were using some kind of sonar. And Andy was showing me after I was done with both nights, and they're editing, and he was showing me this kind of sonar that they had. And you can, like with sonar, you can sort of see colors of things. And he goes, yeah, okay, that's you on the surface right here. And this is a couple hours into my swim, my solo swim in the Pacific at night. And he goes, oh, and here's where that one came up to you and left. And I go, whoa, hold the fucking phone. When one came up to me, and he goes, yeah. And I said, and you didn't tell me why? And he goes, at that point, it really didn't matter, did it? He's either going to eat you or he isn't. And there's no point in getting you scared. And I was like, that is a damn good point, my friend. But they should air it. It is proof that you can get in the water without being eaten by sharks. It's important to be smart. Just do the right thing, and you should be fine. And if you're not, then I don't want to hear about it. So, Mother Ocean. One of my favorite parts of the ocean was water drops. We had different kinds of ducks. A duck would be when you rig up a boat like a Zodiac, an inflatable boat, or a high-speed assault craft like we did at SEAL Team 6. Rig them up with parachutes, push them out the back of the plane, and then you follow it in. Hopefully you have a parachute on. Hopefully it works. And then when you land, you take the boat apart, and then you get on top of it, and then you need to transition from a frisk suit. I would wear a dry suit. Get out of that and get into your assault gear, grab your gun, make sure everything's working. But before I would even do that, when I got on the boat, I love taking a dip. That was the ritual. Even on a hydrographic reconnaissance, when we would be floating in the ocean at night, dropping a lead sled, you're sitting there, I would put a dip in there. You're like smelling some diesel fuel and you're getting seasick, but you're in the water and it's dark and you're thinking about those sharks. Throw a dip in, it calms you down. It was a ritual. We would dip I knew guys that would dip when they were diving closed circuit scuba, believe it or not. A closed circuit scuba is a bubbleless scuba for like ship attacks and stuff like that, where you exhale through your exhalation tube. It goes through a scrubber, and then it scrubs it back into pure oxygen. You breathe that again. I knew guys that would dip doing that, because it gets very boring down there, just looking at a compass and counting your kicks or whatever and looking at your depth. And yeah, guys would dip there to calm them down. I don't know if you spit through your exhalation tube or swallow it, but they would do that, whatever. I never got that hardcore, but I dipped all the time. But once I got out of the Navy, out of that culture, I wanted to get away from the tobacco, but I liked the ritual of dipping. And you've heard me mention Black Buffalo before. Black Buffalo is a tobacco alternative. And it's intended for, if you're a dipper right now and you want to get away from tobacco, try Black Buffalo. Over 21 years of age. It's not tobacco. It's made from edible green leaves, food-grade ingredients. No tobacco leaf or stem. And it's the same texture. You got pouches, you got straight. Great flavors, wintergreen, mint, peach, blood orange. I actually have wintergreen right here if you can see it behind me. It's there. So if you're a dipper over 21, go to blackbuffalo.com and use code THEOPERATOR. Get 15% off of your first order, and the website will tell you where you can find the stuff. It's growing. We appreciate your commitment to spread the word and grow the herd. BlackBuffalo.com. Born in the Midwest, raised in the South. Charge ahead. BlackBuffalo.com. Use code THEOPERATOR. 15% off your first order. And on that, because we talk about security, that also means for your family. I'm all about being prepared, because the perfect plan never exists. If you're prepared, it will help you when something happens. And if you haven't heard about this, listen up. The USDA revealed that countless crops planted last season won't be harvested this season. Thanks to extreme weather conditions and worldwide fertilizer shortages, some crops didn't stand a chance. This is going to cause food shortages and higher prices. They seem to be getting higher all the time in the very near future. That's why now is the time to stock up on emergency food from My Patriot Supply, the nation's largest preparedness company. I love that. Right now, they're offering a special low price on their best-selling 4-week emergency food kit. This kit will offer your family peace of mind when food shortages strike. And this kit includes breakfasts, lunches, dinners, snacks, delicious, with more than 2,000 calories every day to sustain you in tough times. And the food is delicious, trust me. The whole family will love it. You'll laugh at grocery store prices when you have these meals. To steal these savings, go to, I love this, preparewithrob.com. Go to preparewithrob.com. You'll get free shipping too. Don't delay. preparewithrob.com. I want to talk about the history lesson that we mentioned before. I want to talk about the Jersey Shore attacks of 1916. So again, it was 107 years ago, and this is the first real series of shark attacks on people in the water that we know of on record. And it was actually, they said, the first time that people were going into the water as like a way to cool off. There was a heat wave in 1916, and it was pushing people. Well, that and believe it or not, not necessarily a pandemic, but an epidemic of polio had started, and it was concentrated a lot in New York, right around Brooklyn. I think 2,000 people died, and then 6,000 nationwide. Which to today's standard, we can roll out a pandemic that kills way more than that. But because of the heat wave and because of polio, people started going to seaside resorts. It's like, you know what, grandma got polio, let's go to the resort, let's start swimming. And again, this is the point where they didn't really think that sharks could attack man. They thought that sharks couldn't actually break bones. I mentioned that earlier. But let's go to the ocean. And even since 1916, there's been a debate, because this is an attack that happened where 4 people were actually killed over the course of 12 days, and then 1 was injured. And there's been a debate over who done it, which sharks. Obviously, the great white is the first one to show up, because no matter what happens with a shark, even if it's not a shark, if someone gets bit by something, when they report it on the news, they're going to show the leaping great white in South Africa. Air Jaws will be on TV. But they've been debating, is it a great white? Is it a bull? Now, bull sharks, I think, are usually the culprit, because they're assholes. And just by nature, they're assholes. They're just not a nice shark. They have allegedly more adrenaline, more testosterone and adrenaline pumping through their bloods than a bull elephant in heat. And that's all the time. So bulls are when we were filming that show in Bimini, there's a spot where right off the dock in Bimini, where, like, I'm talking the restaurant, the bar's right here, your hotel's right there. Here's a dock that has a sign that says no swimming, because the bull sharks are in there. And the bulls, they'll go out to sea during the day, but they'll come back in. They love murky water. They love the shallows, and they're mean. We were filming a part of the shark show where Andy Casagrande, ABC4 Explorer, were underwater off the dock, and we figured we'd have our backs to the pier and we could see the sharks, and even a camera, you can redirect a shark with a camera, believe it or not. It works as metal. It's metallic. I don't want them that close, a bull shark, but you can do it. We also had rescue swimmers, safety divers, sort of, if you will. And a safety diver, they're just cool dudes. They're fun to have beers with afterwards, because they're locals, and they carry essentially a broomstick so that when the shark gets close, they can poke him. I'm serious. I saw it happen one time. What we were doing to get better footage was we had a guy up on the pier right above us, and the water's maybe 10 to 15 feet deep, and we're having him throw pieces of tuna so the bulls will come in close, take a bite, and we get really good footage, which we did. But one time, I don't know where it landed, but a piece of tuna got way too close. My man didn't, he lost lost a few inches on his curveball or something, and it dropped in, and the bull came to get it. And I remember turning and seeing this bull's mouth. Probably wasn't as close as I thought, but for me, underwater, murky water at night with a bull close, he poked it with the broom. The bull went away, and I was like, and scene. We're done with this part. But bulls, ever since 1916, they've been debating during 1916 who did this. Great whites, bulls, or the two that are most commonly brought up and blamed. And there wasn't a lot known about sharks before 1916, and ichthyologists, they're basically zoologists except for fish. They tell us about the nature of sharks. And after these Jersey Shore attacks that happened 107 years ago, they entered into popular culture where they were drawn up everywhere, caricatures, front page stuff. And these attacks have actually been documented on like Shark Week, Shark Fest, different channels. 12 Days of Terror, Blood in the Water in 2009 came out. But this was on the Jersey Shore a long, long time ago because people were in the water now because it's hot outside and there's polio and all this stuff. The first attack, and we're talking about this because this is the anniversary of the last attack. The first attack was on July 1st, 1916 at Beach Haven, Long Beach Island, Jersey Shore. A guy by the name of Charles Van Zandt, who was 28 out of Philadelphia, was on vacation with his family. And they were getting ready to go to dinner, and Van Zandt decided he's going to go for a quick swim in the Atlantic, and he had his dog. This is important to the story. A Chesapeake Bay Retriever, a retriever that playing on the beach. They enter the water. As soon as they enter the water, shortly after they enter the water, Van Zandt began shouting. It's one of those things where you always hear people say, yeah, during gunfire, we first thought, pop, it's fireworks. Well, he's yelling. He's got to be yelling for his dog, but a shark was actually biting his leg. So Van Zandt was rescued by a lifeguard. Another guy helped the lifeguard drag him in. The other guy claimed that the shark actually stayed with him up until they got to the beach. Van Zandt's left thigh was stripped of flesh, and they brought him back to the hotel, and he actually bled to death before dinner on the manager's desk. So that's an issue, obviously. The guy bled to death, and that's a lot of ways. We talked before about a test bite. If a shark bites your femoral artery, it doesn't take you long to bleed out from that. But that's tragic. This is the first major attack. The second one, so that first one was on July 1st. July 6th, the second major attack. They didn't make much of the first attack. They thought it was a fluke. There was actually people saying that it might have been a huge sea turtle because those things have big mouths and they've known to be temperamental, and it could have been a sea turtle because, like I said, not a lot of reporting on. The zoologist of the fish told us that there are not a lot of shark attacks at the time, none that we knew about. But the second one was a Swiss bell captain named Charles Bruder. He was 27 years old at the Essex and Sussex Hotel. He was attacked while swimming 130 yards off the shore. This is what concerned me because the first guy got bit on the leg, and they were saying everything from, well, this shark was going after the guy's dog and accidentally bit this dude in the leg and he bled out. This shark bit this guy, the Swiss bell captain at the hotel, Charles Bruder. It bit him in the abdomen and severed his legs. Now, that's concerning. So he bites you in the guts, but he severs your legs. That's a big shark. And obviously the water turned red. And after hearing screams, a woman said, hey, there's a canoe out there with a red hull that capsized and was floating near the surface. Wasn't that? It was a guy. And so lifeguards went out there. They rowed a boat. And they realized he'd been bitten by a shark, so they pulled him to the water, and he obviously bitten in half. He was done. And after this attack, because the first one they didn't know if it was a turtle, didn't know what it was. The second attack, according to the New York Times, which back in the day they weren't completely full of shit, they said the women were panic-stricken. Some had fainted at the sight of this guy's body when they brought him ashore. And like hotel guests and other hotels, they raised money for the guy's mom in Switzerland. So this is tragic. People are starting to get concerned. There might be sharks in the water. The next two major attacks. So the first one could have been a mistake. The second one, the guy gets bitten in half, large shark. So we're thinking of obviously an apex predator, I think. Then the next two attacks, here's where you start thinking which apex predator was it? Because this happened at Matawan Creek near the town of Keyport on July 12th. So the next two attacks. But the thing, Matawan Creek is 30 miles north of Spring Lake. It's not in the ocean. It's across from Staten Island. And it made it, this is the brackish water we talked about, and it's an unlikely place for humans to interact with sharks because brackish water, but bull sharks are known to swim upstream. They live in freshwater. Somehow they've adapted, and isn't that great that of all sharks that can swim up the river into your freshwater, it's these bull sharks. But there were even like sea captains that would spot so this is the creek. They call it a creek. They would some dude spotted an 8-foot shark The town dismissed him, but this captain saw this thing swimming in there. Allegedly, again, we don't know, and I certainly wasn't there, neither were you. But right around 2 p.m. in the creek, a group of local boys, including an 11-year-old kid named Lester Stillwell, they were playing in the creek together. And again, a dog's involved. One of the boys brought his dog, and the dog was swimming with them along with these boys off this dock. When they saw, according to their reports, these are young boys playing, their reports said they saw an old black weather-beaten board or a weathered log, and they see this thing in the water. They're on the water. Then they saw a dorsal fin. Now, we mentioned the sandbar sharks and the large dorsal fins, but the sandbar sharks don't go into the creeks. They saw a dorsal fin. We're in the river, in the creek. That's a shark. So the boys realized it was a shark, and the young kid Stillwell, before he could climb on the creek, the shark pulled him underwater. So the sharks got the kid, and the boys then ran for help, which is smart. Several men, including a local businessman named Watson Stanley Fisher. He's 24 years old, Fisher. He came to investigate. He and the others, they dived into the creek to find Stillwell, believing him to have suffered a seizure. They located the boy's body, and they attempted to return it to the shore. At this point, Fisher, the 24-year-old businessman, he was also bitten by the shark in front of the other townspeople. So they saw the boy, they grabbed the boy, they saw the shark. He bit Fisher, and they lost the young kid, the 11-year-old Stillwell, in the process. Fisher's right thigh was severely injured. He bled to death at the local hospital around 5:30 p.m. And then they found the rest of the young kid's remains in the water. So now this thing is not necessarily a man-eater. This one's an asshole for sure. He just killed 2 people in the same area in the creek. And then the 5th and final victim, this is one on our anniversary today, was Joseph Dunn. He was attacked nearly half a mile away from that dock 30 minutes after the fatal attacks on Stillwell and Fisher. So the shark bit his leg, but this guy, his name was Joseph Dunn. This was a kid, not a guy, sorry, 14-year-old kid. He was attacked a couple minutes later. He was rescued by his brother and a friend after they actually played tug-of-war. They said it was a vicious tug-of-war battle between these 2 dudes and the shark, and then Joseph Dunn was taken to St. Peter's University Hospital in New Brunswick, and he recovered from the bite a few months later in 1916. So now you got 4 people killed and 1 person severely wounded by a shark, so we got to figure out what in the world is going on. So after that last attack, the anniversary being today, July 12th, 1916, 107 years ago, sort of was the realization that there are animals in the water capable of attacking humans, and if you get into their environment, they might do it. So the knee-jerk reaction was to get politicians involved, which always solves everything. What are the words that you never want to hear? I'm from the government, and I'm here to help. But they started to appropriate funds to different places, and they were trying their best to do everything like armed boats watching out for people and extra lifeguards. They got the state, local, and federal governments involved. And there were just weird stuff. Some of the things they tried to do, they put up, they weren't even anti-fishing or anti-shark nets at the time. They were doing steel cages because now that people are getting bitten, they don't know what they're dealing with. And so not a cage necessarily, but like the way the nets work, but they were steel, which is better than the nets they're using now, the controversial nets in Australia that with the best intentions put up the nets and the great whites won't bite the people, but then you're getting marine life, everything that doesn't need to be caught up in a net and drowning a horrible death. Drowning, but like whales get caught up a lot, sharks get caught up, fish, sea lions, every kind of marine life gets caught up in those nets. But then they had dudes rolling around in boats throwing dynamite, which to me seems more dangerous. An explosive in the water is more dangerous than an explosive on the land because water doesn't compress and it will liquefy your organs. I mean, sonar does really bad stuff too. Grenades and dynamite are more dangerous than sharks. We'll get into what's more dangerous than sharks. And then people would start coming up with the weirdest theories. Obviously, all you have is newspapers and things because there is no internet. But just grand stories of what I saw and how I defended. And I was reading some of these stories of these man-eating sharks that attack boats, and they had to they talked a little bit different in 1916 than we do now, because I was reading stuff and a lot of things. I'm sort of just compressing some of the articles that I looked up. They said, yeah, the shark was after my boat and I had to beat him off, which to me sounds like an odd relationship with a marine animal, but I think they meant like hitting him with an oar, not beating him off, which has never been used. Maybe that works. They say pop him in the nose. I've always wondered how they came up with pop him in the nose or just pinch his fin. But to this day, they still don't know if it was a rogue shark or a couple of different sharks, because one of the dudes was bitten in half, which obviously the first shark that comes to mind is a great white, but a bull shark can do that. A tiger shark can do that. Devastating injury, getting bitten in half. But then, so it could be a great white, which is what they always wanted it to be. But then you go up into the rivers, and that's not a great white. That's bull shark's territory. And a bull's a mean guy. We talked about him. They did eventually catch, I think, just about an 8-foot great white, which makes sense because when great whites give birth, the juveniles stay close to the shore because there's less of a threat to them near the breakers as opposed to out in the open ocean, because sharks will eat each other. Fish will eat fish. I don't know if you know that, but juveniles will stay in there. And a juvenile, actually, if someone gets bit by a great white, it's because a juvenile is still just being a kid trying to figure out what's what. And if, again, the only way they can test is a bite, and that's too bad. I personally think that the bigger the shark if you run into a shark, the bigger the better, because that's a more mature shark that's been around and realizes what it does and doesn't want to eat. Again, don't be splashing. Don't be all splashy, and you're supposed to just face them and make eye contact with the shark. But they wanted it to be a great white. They did catch one. They sent it to the taxidermy, and they stuffed the shark. And I think someone, either the taxidermist or someone associated with the taxidermist, was involved with Barnum and Bailey, the circus. And I guess the shark that they caught, the great white they caught, did have, I don't know how good the forensics were back in the day, but they said they found human remains inside the great white, and the shark attacks did stop afterwards. Who knows? They never found out. And some of the theories that came up with where these sharks came from, because they're fairly new. I mean, even reading that they were fairly new to sunbathing and dipping in the ocean to get cool, that kind of awkward to me, but I guess that's what. But they were wondering where the sharks came from, and some of the theories were because of the war. This is World War I. Because of the explosions and stuff, the sharks left the Mediterranean and came over here, and some of them were saying they actually followed the new German U-boats or whatever. And you know how it goes with people when panic starts to flare up and it gets one person panics, they all panic. It seems like so you hear the craziest stories and people believe the most ridiculous shit, i.e. 2020. If you look back at that, people believe some ridiculous stuff, but they're saying why the sharks are here and all this stuff. And you know, it went on, and they were, again, that was back when they said just splash. I actually, during World War II, because of naval battles and people getting into falling into the ocean after a ship being wrecked, the USS Indianapolis, I've covered that before. Sharks were attacking there. The Navy was trying to come up with ways to deter sharks. I actually tried this. I have some of the footage with lemons and reef sharks and a few tigers. They have this anti-shark dye. I'll post a picture of that old school Navy stuff where you just put the dye in around you. And I actually jumped in again in Bimini with a bunch of sharks and was spraying that dye around me to see if it worked. And it actually did the opposite effect, because sharks are very curious. So these sharks would come up and check it out, and I'm in the middle of this big cloud of dye getting a little bit bumped by some lemon sharks, which, again, there's a difference between being in the water with a shark, knowing that the shark is not doesn't want to necessarily eat you, but now he's curious and you're in there. So it's a little shady, but nothing happened. The dye doesn't work. And sharks have been fascinating. And then in 1974 is when it really got interesting, because a dude by the name of Peter Benchley wrote a book, and I think it's called Jaws. And then a year later in 1975, Steven Spielberg directed a movie of the same name, Jaws, and that fucked everyone up. Because Jaws, I mean, you've probably seen Jaws if you haven't obviously watched Jaws. I remember being from Montana, never been in the ocean, watching Jaws, fascinated with the great white sharks, scared shitless of the ocean because everywhere there's a shark that's going to maul you. That's what I thought with Jaws. I mean, Jaws it was loosely based on what happened on the Jersey Shore, but they did Amity Island, Rogue Shark. Richard Dreyfuss was brilliant. He played the young marine biologist. Roy Schneider was the sheriff. And even to this day, if you're in the water or on the water, near the water, even some places on land, if something happens, someone will always pipe up with, "You're going to need a bigger boat." I mean, that's how iconic this movie is. But Jaws screwed it up for everyone, and people familiar with the ocean they always talk about the real Jaws. Like, that's a movie. It was a thriller. And Sharknado, which I'm pretty sure I don't think that was based on a true story, but the Sharknado with the tornado full of sharks, and obviously they're gonna eat people, and then I think that Dr. Evil had sharks with frickin' lasers, and sharks are always around, but they're necessary for the ocean, for the habitat, for the planet. You know, we all love a good ecosystem, and we're all about the planet, and sharks are a major part of the ecosystem. But I wanted to give you a little look back at history, how that stuff happened, and how regardless of what's going on and how our technology is, panic is contagious, and if we all panic in the ocean. But before we bail today, just to put everything in perspective, because we did say if you don't get in the ocean, then you won't get bitten by a shark, which is probably true unless you really screwed up. But I want to talk about a couple things that kill more people every year than sharks, to put everything in perspective. Because sharks kill, I want to say, between 5 and 10 people a year, considering how many people in the ocean and some of the mistakes that are made. You know, you get it. And now here's some things, though, that kill more people a year. You know that vending machines kill more people than sharks? 13 people a year die because they got pissed off they couldn't get their bag of chips or whatnot, their protein shake out of the vending machine, so they tip it and it falls on them. 13 people a year. Deer kill 130 people a year. A deer, Bambi's mom. That's because, again, we talked about going into parks, getting too close. It's a wild animal. Wild animals are wild. Selfies. 12 people a year die taking selfies. And I'm a little different about this one because that's kind of just Darwin. You know, you don't need to, because, car crashes, electrocution, getting hit by a train. You don't need to get that close to a train for a selfie. Falling into an active volcano. To me, and volcanoes kill more people a year than sharks, without even the selfies. People just, getting hit by volcanoes, and volcanoes, I guess, are dangerous. 450 people a year die falling out of bed. That's more. Falling out of beds kill more people than sharks. And I'm assuming that's breaking your neck or whatnot, unless you sleep like on a bed in front of a volcano. Champagne corks kill 24 people a year, and that's probably getting hit by the face, by the cork in the face at a wedding. More people die per year getting hit by falling coconuts. 150 people die a year getting hit by a coconut. And if you live a life to a point where you're on a beach and you get hit by a coconut, I think your time was just up. 34 people die a year from hot tap water. This one freaked me out a little bit. 7,000 people die annually from messy handwriting, and I guess they attribute that to a lot of doctors that have bad penmanship, and so the pharmacist who reads your prescription for Adderall or whatever gives you the wrong thing, and that kills you. 41 people die a year getting hit by a falling TV, and that's not like a TV that gets thrown out of an apartment in Manhattan. That's like you just tip the TV over. I'm assuming you're watching the NFL or whatever, and a Bud Light commercial comes on. You just tip that bitch on yourself and end it. This one is odd, too. I don't know why I was looking these up. 2,500 left-handed individuals die each year after using items that were designed for right-handed individuals. Being buried alive, I guess 29 people die a year from being... That's not funny. 29 people a year get buried alive. What did they do to deserve that? And then elephants kill 600 people a year, and they're just big, fluffy, furry animals. I guess elephants treat people the way that people treat dogs. Speaking of dogs kill more people a year than sharks. And I don't mean, usually it's like feral dogs or wild dogs, but they're dogs. Not a lot of tame sharks for pets, and pets do kill people. Hot dogs, speaking of dogs, kill more people a year. And that's not even at the hot dog eating contest, which to me seems kind of dangerous. And then, of course, there's mosquitoes. I think that's the number one. Lightning kills more people than sharks, and so do roller coasters. I don't know if roller coasters. I wonder if that's at the theme parks or the one where the meth head roadies are hooking it. Roadies, carnies, huh? But anyway, these sharks are they kill 5 to 10 people a year, which, considering a couple 100 million sharks in the ocean, not a lot. And usually it's not on purpose. You get the case of a hungry shark, and that's again just your time. But without sharks, ocean life as we know it would cease to exist. And I think we can all agree that we need a good ocean. A healthy ocean for everything. The biodiversity flourishing in the ocean is linked to these apex predators. I love saying apex predators, and it requires a health of their population. You know that even speaking of apex predators, I always think of the great white. When I was diving with great whites, we got so close to them, and we were in a cage with the whites, and that's a great idea. But some guys do it without. They don't have black eyes like they say like in the movie Jaws. The middle of their eyes is actually blue, a really oceanic blue. But the absence of sharks would dramatically alter the entire ecosystem if we got rid of sharks. So you can't be out there hunting them, throwing dynamite on them. As apex predators, they stand at the top of the food chain, maintaining the balance of marine life. They control species abundance, distribution, and diversity. And we all agree diversity is our strength, which in turn affects the health of the marine habitats. And everyone loves a clean ocean. We need them, and they're not mean. They're just sharks being sharks. So keep a lot of that stuff in mind when you get in the ocean. Be aware. Just because you can't. One of my sayings is just if you can't see it, it ain't there. Which, But wear fins if you can and a mask. Be aware of your surroundings. You should do that everywhere. Situational awareness is key in life. Don't panic. Don't panic anywhere. Try not to. Stay calm. And avoid selfies with champagne in a bathtub party next to hippos on a volcano, and you'll be fine. You're never out of the fight.